The hallway echoed with silence. Emma Carson stood frozen by the front door of the house she had lived in for nearly a decade. Her fingers tightened around the handle of a rolling suitcase. It wasn't heavy, just enough clothes for a few days, a toothbrush, a folder of important papers, and her daughter Claire's favorite stuffed rabbit. On her back, a threadbare backpack.
Slin over one shoulder, a pink pillow shaped like a cloud.
Claire was still clutching it as she leaned her sleepy head against her mother's waist. Ryan Blake, her husband, ex-husband technically, stood 10 feet away, arms crossed, expression unreadable. His button-down shirt was crisp as always, no wrinkle in sight. His posture, rigid. The kind that came from years of boardroom meetings and controlling every variable in his life. "Emma," he said, voice low but firm, "you have what you need. Let's not make this harder than it has to be." Emma didn't respond. There was nothing more to say. The divorce had been swift, brutal and bloodless, just like Ryan liked things.
No courtroom battle. Juste signature.
He had offered her a settlement that felt less like a gesture of support and more like hush money. She declined it. In the end, he got the house, the car, the designer furniture, and worse than all of it, temporary custody of Claire. For 6 months. A cooling-off period he'd called it, to give Emma time to restructure her life. But tonight, in a rare act of what? Guilt? Strategy? He had agreed to let Claire spend one last night with her mother before school started the next day. "Say goodbye, sweetie," he said gently, but his eyes remained cold. Claire hugged Emma's waist tighter. "Do I have to go, Mommy?" Emma knelt down to meet her daughter's eyes.
"Just for now, sweetheart."
"I promise, Mommy's not going far. I'll see you really soon." Claire nodded, tears welling but not spilling. She was only 7, but already she had learned how to hold things in. Emma kissed her forehead, then rose. She didn't look back at Ryan as she opened the front door. Outside, the night was colder than usual for late September. Emma pulled Claire's cloud pillow tighter against her side as she walked down the porch steps and toward the Uber idling at the curb. She helped Claire into the back seat and sat beside her, fingers trembling as she fastened the seatbelt. The driver, a young woman with kind eyes, glanced in the rearview mirror. "Airport."
Emma shook her head.
"No. Just."
Oak Ridge Appartement. East Portland.
The driver nodded and pulled away. As they drove, Emma tried to memorize the streets she used to know so well. She had never imagined seeing them this way, through the window of someone else's car, carrying her daughter away from the life she thought she had built to last. She had given everything to that house. To that man. To that version of her family. But maybe that was the problem. Emma had built everything around Ryan. Around his schedule, his expectations, his approval. She looked down at Claire, who had already fallen asleep with her head on Emma's lap, the pink pillow under her cheek. When they arrived at the apartment complex, Emma carried Claire inside, her arms aching. The unit was small, 1 bedroom, a kitchenette, and a view of the neighboring dumpster. The wallpaper was peeling, the floor creaked, and the light above the sink flickered every few seconds. Still, it was hers. She laid Claire gently on the futon, covered her with a thin blanket, and kissed her forehead again. Then, as she placed the pink pillow beside her daughter's head, something odd caught her attention. A faint zipper. Emma froze. She had washed that pillowcase 100 times and never noticed a zipper there. Curious, she opened it, fingers brushing against the synthetic fluff inside. But there, wedged near the seam, was something hard and rectangular. She pulled it out slowly.
A bank envelope.
Her breath caught as she opened it and pulled out a debit card. It was new, still wrapped in plastic. Inside the envelope, a note in blocky, neat handwriting.
"No mistake. It's for you."
Ah. Emma stared at it. Her heart pounded. She wasn't sure if it was panic or disbelief. She grabbed her phone and opened her banking app, punching in the card number, her fingers trembling.
The screen loaded. Account balance, $cent,000.00.
Her knees gave out. She sank to the floor beside the futon, the phone still glowing in her hand. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. It wasn't a mistake. Ryan had done this. Slipped the card into Claire's pillow, as if he couldn't bear to hand it to her himself. No explanation.
No condition.
Just money.
Guilt money?
A bribe? An apology? Emma didn't know. And she didn't care. She closed her eyes, leaning her head against the futon. The old Emma, the one who used to flinch at Ryan's cold silences, who walked on eggshells in her own kitchen, who let herself shrink for the sake of peace, would have torn up the card. Would have said, I don't need your charity. But tonight? Tonight, the new Emma Carson picked herself up from the floor, walked into the bathroom, splashed cold water on her face, and looked herself in the mirror. You're going to start over, she whispered to her reflection. And this time, you'll do it on your own terms. She returned to the futon, lay down beside Claire, and held her daughter's hand. Her fingers were tiny but strong, the way little kids always are without knowing it. Tomorrow would be hard. The days ahead would be harder. But tonight, they had each other. And that was enough to begin. The sun rose early in Portland, filtering through the thin blinds of the apartment's only bedroom. Emma woke with a start, unsure for a second where she was. The air smelled faintly of dust and plastic, the kind that clung to old window frames and worn linoleum floors. For a moment, she thought it had all been a dream, that she was still in her old bedroom in her soft sheets, with her daughter asleep across the hallway in a pastel-painted room. But then she heard the faint hum of the refrigerator, the distant garbage truck rumbling through the alley, and Claire murmuring softly in her sleep beside her. It was real.
Emma sat up slowly.
Her back ached from the futon. She ran a hand through her tangled hair and stood, glancing at the clock on the microwave.
6h12 du matin. Claire stirred, blinking sleepily.
Are we still here, Mommy? Emma bent down and kissed her on the forehead. We are. But it's going to be okay, sweetheart. You and me, we're going to figure it out. They had cereal for breakfast, sitting cross-legged on the floor with paper bowls and plastic spoons. Emma had no table yet, no couch, just the futon and a few essentials she had picked up at a second-hand store. Her plan was to get through this week, 1 hour at a time. When Claire left for her first day at her new school, a public elementary nestled between rows of modest houses, Emma returned home and sat in the silence. The apartment felt too quiet, too still. She opened the bank app again, the balance still staring back at her like a blinking cursor.
$cent,000.
A year ago, she would have laughed at the idea of needing it. She had Ryan, a stable home, a car, friends in the right places. But now, with barely any support system and no job, she understood what security truly meant. But Emma didn't want to use that money. Not yet. Not until she knew who she was without it. Instead, she pulled out her notebook and wrote at the top of a blank page, what I can do. She wrote, I can bake. I can learn.
I kan fight for my doctor. I kan survive.
By noon, she had a plan. Emma walked 3 blocks to a small cafe she had noticed the day before. The smell of coffee and cinnamon drifted through the open door. The sign above it read, Sophie's Bakehouse. She stepped inside. Behind the counter, a woman with thick black curls pinned back with a pencil was shouting over the noise of the espresso machine. Carlos, I said almond milk, not soy. She's allergic. Then she spotted Emma. Her face shifted from annoyed to stunned in seconds. Emma?
Emma Carson. Emma blinked. Sophia?
Sophia Reyes dropped the cup she was holding and rushed around the counter to embrace her.
What the hell are you doing here?
I thought you were still living in Lake Oswego with the Stepford wives. Emma laughed, then broke into tears. They sat at a back table, catching up over lattes. Sophia, still loud and full of fire, ran the tiny bakehouse with 3 part-time staff and a broken espresso machine she called Frankie. She hadn't seen Emma in almost 4 years, ever since Emma had slowly pulled away from all her friends during the last phase of her marriage. You disappeared, girl, Sophia said, stirring her coffee. We thought you joined a cult or something. Emma smiled faintly. I guess I did. A very boring, lonely, well-decorated one. Sophia leaned in, serious now.
Are you okay?
Emma hesitated. I will be.
I'm getting a fresh start. Just me and Claire. And the ex? Out of the picture.
Mostly.
Sophia leaned back.
Well, in that case, I've got a proposition for you. She stood and waved Emma to follow her behind the counter, through the swinging kitchen doors, and into a narrow back room that smelled like flour and sugar and dreams. This is my kitchen, Sophia said proudly. And it's always short-staffed.
Justi remember how to back. Emma logged, en itching. I never forgo.
Then consider this your second home. You work when you can.
Et elle paie watican.
But you get to bake, and maybe, just maybe, you'll find your groove again. Emma blinked, overwhelmed.
Sophia, I don't know what to say.
Say yes. Yes. And just like that, something old inside her stirred awake. That night, Emma came home with flour on her jeans and the smell of vanilla in her hair. Claire was on the futon, drawing in her sketchbook. She looked up as Emma entered.
You smell like cookies.
I made snickerdoodles with Sophia. I brought you one. Claire grinned and took the cookie eagerly. Can we make our own sometime? Emma nodded, tears burning behind her eyes. Yes, baby. We're going to make everything ourselves. Later, after Claire had gone to bed, Emma sat by the kitchen counter, lit only by the small lamp above the sink. She opened her notebook again, flipped to a new page, and wrote. New plan. Bake 3 days a week. Save money from sales.
Start a small online store. Keep Claire close.
Use Ryan's money only if absolutely necessary. Below it, she added a line.
Don't let the past define the future.
She closed the notebook, stood, and washed her hands. They smelled faintly of cinnamon and butter. They felt steady, calloused in all the right places. The next morning, Emma walked Claire to school. The air was crisp, and the trees had begun to turn gold along the sidewalks. Claire skipped ahead, backpack bouncing, cloud pillow tucked under one arm. You're happy, Mommy? She asked suddenly, turning around. Emma stopped walking. I'm getting there, she said. And for the first time in a long, long while, she meant it. It started on a Thursday. Emma had spent the previous night in Sophia's kitchen, carefully shaping dough, measuring cinnamon to the gram, kneading with a kind of patience that only comes from needing something more than just a paycheck. The kitchen had become her sanctuary. The heat of the oven, the scent of melting butter, it all made her feel present again.
Alive.
Sophia had noticed. You've got hands like my grandmother, she'd said with a grin, watching Emma shape each bun with meticulous care. She used to say that bread knows when your heart is in it. That's why hers always rose just right. Emma smiled. I used to bake for Claire when she was a toddler.
Back before everything.
Sophia clapped her hands. Then it's time to start again. Take that first batch of cinnamon rolls and sell them at the park this weekend.
You veux got ce talent.
Now find the courage. Emma hesitated. At a park? I don't even have a booth or a license or...
Sophia reste à hand.
You're not opening a bakery yet.
You're testing your feet in the water. Start small. Get a folding table, a smile, and a basket of what you made tonight. The rest will come.
Emma nodded slowly. It terrified her, putting herself out there. But then again, everything about this new life terrified her. And if she waited until she wasn't afraid, she might wait forever. By Saturday morning, she stood in Laurelhurst Park, a fold-up table borrowed from Sophia propped beside a bench, a handmade sign taped to the front, home-baked.
From Emma et Claire.
The sign was a last-minute addition, inspired by Claire, who had stayed up late coloring the letters with crayons and carefully drawing a smiley face next to her name. Claire sat beside her now, a little folding chair beneath her, clutching the cash box like it was a treasure chest. She was wearing her favorite overalls and a sun hat slightly too big for her head. Emma had woken up before dawn to bake the rolls, 24 in total. Each one was tucked into a brown paper bag with a sticker on top, made with heart. By 9 a.m., they'd sold 3. By 10:30, they'd sold none more. Emma tried not to panic. She smiled at passers-by. She offered samples.
She made small talk.
A few people nodded politely. One person asked if she accepted Venmo, and an older woman complimented the smell but walked on by. At 11 o'clock, Claire tugged her sleeve. Mommy, what if no one wants them?
Emma crouche de besideur.
Then we'll eat them all ourselves. And maybe we'll try again next weekend. Or we'll bake something else.
We are learning, remember?
Claire nodded solemnly, but Emma could see the disappointment in her eyes. Just then, a man in a grey hoodie and jeans approached, pushing a stroller. His beard was a little unkempt, and he looked like he hadn't slept in a while. Hi, he said, glancing at the sign. You made these? Emma stood quickly. Yes. Homemade cinnamon rolls. Still warm. He picked up a sample, took a bite, and his eyebrows lifted. Wow. That's good. Emma smiled, trying not to show how much that simple sentence meant. How much? $3 each. Or 2 for 5. He nodded.
Il tek four.
And a fifth for me to eat right now. He pulled out a wallet and handed her a 20. Claire opened the box, carefully counted out the change, and handed it to him with a shy smile. Thanks, he said, then glanced back. By the way, I run a coffee shop a few blocks down. Called Maple and Pine. We're always looking for local bakers to feature. Ever thought about selling wholesale?
Emma blinked. No.
I mean, I just started. He smiled. Well, think about it. We're trying to stay away from industrial suppliers.
Your rolls taste like they belong in someone's kitchen.
That's a compliment. Emma scribbled her number on a paper napkin and handed it to him. When he walked away, Claire bounced in her chair. Mommy.
That is so cool.
Emma grinned. It really is. By noon, they had sold out. The cash box was heavier than it had ever been. $72, not a fortune, but it felt like gold. That night, after Claire had gone to bed, Emma sat alone on the futon, the empty cash box beside her. She didn't open her notebook or check the bank app. She didn't plan anything. She just cried.
Not because of fear this time.
Or sadness. But relief. It was the first time in months she had felt like herself again, not as a wife, not as someone's ex, not as a failure, but as Emma. The next morning, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Daniel from Maple and Pine. Any chance you've got more of those cinnamon rolls this week? I'd love to try a test batch in the shop.
Emma stared at the message, attitude.
She tapped a reply. I can deliver 6 by Wednesday morning. Thank you for the opportunity. Within minutes, he replied. Perfect. Looking forward to it. By Tuesday night, Emma was back in Sophia's kitchen, hands deep in dough, hair tied in a messy bun. Sophia leaned against the counter, sipping coffee and watching her work. So, she said, who's the guy with the stroller and the interest in cinnamon? Emma rolled her eyes. Just a coffee shop owner.
Sophia raised a brow.
Aha. And how cute is he exactly? I didn't notice. Sophia smirked. Girl, even I noticed. He had dad hands.
That is a rare thing. Emma looked. I'm not looking for anything. I barely have my life together.
Sophia walked over and gave her shoulder a squeeze.
You don't need someone to fix your life.
But maybe, just maybe, someone can walk beside you while you build it. Emma didn't answer. She just kept kneading. Because right now, the only thing she was building was a batch of rolls, and a tiny quiet belief that maybe, just maybe, the future wasn't something to fear anymore. Emma adjusted her tote bag over one shoulder, holding Claire's hand tightly as they walked through the aisles of the neighborhood grocery store. It was a cloudy Tuesday afternoon, and the store hummed with the usual after-school energy. Parents picking up dinner ingredients, kids asking for snacks, the faint hum of overhead music that no one really paid attention to. Claire skipped ahead a little, stopping at the end of the cereal aisle. Mommy, can we get the one with the bear on the box? Emma smiled. Sure, just one box, okay? She reached for it and placed it in the cart, which already held flour, eggs, brown sugar, and a few blocks of butter, ingredients she now bought in bulk thanks to the growing popularity of her cinnamon rolls. Can I pick a fruit too? Claire asked. Anything under $3, Emma replied playfully. Claire darted off toward the produce section. Emma turned the cart and followed, weaving through the shoppers with practiced ease. She was halfway through the aisle when a familiar voice made her stop cold. Emma. She turned sharply. Ryan. He stood just 10 feet away, looking exactly the same and yet so unfamiliar. Crisp button-down shirt, khakis without a wrinkle, leather watch still perfectly centered on his wrist. But there was something else, something behind his eyes. A weariness she hadn't seen before. And next to him stood Margaret. Margaret Blake, in her ever-present pearls and cashmere sweater, arms crossed like a gatekeeper to an invisible throne. Emma's fingers tightened around the cart handle. She hadn't seen either of them since the day she left the house.
Emma, Ryan said again, stepping forward. Hey, how have you been?
She swallowed.
I've been good.
Claire came skipping back into view, holding a small bag of apples. She froze when she saw her father. Daddy.
Ryan crouched, arms open.
Hey, Bug. Claire dropped the apples and ran to him. He hugged her tightly, closing his eyes for a long second, breathing her in. Emma watched, her throat tightening. For a moment, the air felt heavy with everything unsaid. But then Margaret stepped forward and placed a hand on Ryan's shoulder. We should go, she said briskly. You don't want to make a scene. Ryan looked up at Emma, almost apologetic.
She's right.
I didn't expect to run into you. Emma nodded. Neither did I. Claire clung to Ryan's leg. Can I come with you today, Daddy? Emma's stomach turned. Ryan hesitated. Margaret leaned in. We didn't come to play tug-of-war. Let's go. Ryan gently pried Claire's arms from his leg and stood.
Yell'll call you, okay sweetheart.
Claire's eyes brimmed with tears. But I miss you.
Emma stepped forward.
Claire, honey, we talked about this. You'll see Daddy soon. But today we're making cookies, remember? Claire sniffed and nodded slowly. Without another word, Margaret turned and pushed the cart away. Ryan lingered for one more second, looking like he wanted to say something, but didn't. Then he followed his mother. Emma stood frozen for a long moment. Claire returned to her side, still holding the bag of apples, but her face was quiet now. Distant. That night, after dinner, Emma found Claire in the bedroom drawing. She had sketched 3 stick figures, one tall, one medium, and one small, holding hands. But there was a dotted line between the tall one and the rest.
Emma sat besides.
Can I see? Claire held up the page. It's us. But Daddy is far away now. Emma swallowed. Yes, he is. Why? Emma thought carefully. Sometimes grown-ups have to figure things out. And sometimes, that means being apart for a while. Claire nodded solemnly. I want to be with you always, Mommy. Emma wrapped her arms around her daughter. And I'll always want that too. But she knew, this couldn't continue. Claire was torn, confused. And as much as Emma wanted to protect her daughter, she couldn't keep avoiding the reality of their custody arrangement. Emma reached for her phone and scrolled through her contacts. Her thumb paused over a name she hadn't used in a long time.
Jessica Vaughan, Family Law.
She tapped. The line rang twice before a smooth voice answered. Jessica Vaughan speaking.
Jessica. It's Emma Carson. I need help.
The next day, Emma sat in Jessica's downtown office, nervously twisting a tissue in her lap. The room was sleek, filled with books and soft lighting. Jessica sat across from her in a gray suit, glasses perched on her nose, radiating calm authority. I remember your case, Jessica said. You settled outside of court. Temporary custody to the father. No spousal support accepted. No assets retained. Emma nodded.
I walked away.
I just needed out.
Jessica leaned forward.
And now, I want full custody of my daughter. Jessica's expression didn't change. Do you have income? I'm selling baked goods. It's not much, but it's growing. I'm working on a business license and a small kitchen rental. Stable housing? Studio apartment, safe neighborhood. Jessica scribbled a few notes. Do you have any record of emotional or physical abuse?
Emma shook her head. Nothing official.
But, he was controlling. Cold.
Made me feel like a ghost in my own life.
Jessica nodded. Unfortunately, that's hard to prove in court. But not impossible. What matters more is showing that you can provide a stable, nurturing environment, and that shared custody is causing confusion or distress for the child. Emma hesitated. Claire is. She's struggling. Every time she sees him, it's like she gets pulled back into a space I've tried to free her from. Jessica closed her notebook. Then we build a case.
It won't be easy.
Ryan has money, lawyers, and the appearance of stability. But you have something more powerful, the truth.
Emma exhaled, a mix of fear and relief.
How long will it take? A few months. Maybe longer.
Are you ready for a fight?
Emma thought of Claire. Of the dotted line in that drawing. Yes. I'm ready. Later that week, back in her apartment, Emma sat at the kitchen counter with her notebook open. The page was blank at first. Then slowly, she began to write. To do before court. Gather letters from Sophia and Daniel. Get copy of Claire's drawings. Track Claire's sleep patterns after visits. Finish licensing for bakery sales. Find a therapist for Claire, and maybe for me. She underlined the last one. In the background, Claire was singing a made-up song about cinnamon and sugar. Emma smiled. She was scared. But she was no longer powerless. This time, she would not walk away. She would stand up. For Claire. For herself. For the life they were finally beginning to rebuild. The first court date was set for mid-November. By then, Portland's trees had turned a fierce red and gold, and the early morning air bit at Emma's fingertips as she loaded a tray of cinnamon rolls into a cardboard box. She had been baking every day, not just to keep the bills paid, but to keep herself centered. In the quiet of the kitchen, she could think clearly. And lately, most of her thoughts revolved around preparing for what lay ahead. Jessica had instructed her to gather everything: receipts, testimonies, sketches, even social media messages. Any trace that proved Emma was building something steady, something loving. More than once, Emma stayed up past midnight, piecing together photos, writing out her daily schedule, scanning Claire's drawings, and documenting every detail of her life as a single mother. Each morning after dropping Claire at school, she would stop by Maple and Pine to deliver her baked goods. Daniel was always there behind the counter, sleeves rolled up, the smell of coffee clinging to his skin like a second identity. He paid her fairly and on time, and sometimes he asked questions, not just about the rolls, but about Claire, the court case, her dreams. You ever think about opening your own place? He asked one morning, sliding a cup of black coffee across the counter. Emma took it gratefully. Every day. I have a folder on my laptop labeled, Someday. It's filled with menu ideas, layout sketches, even names. He smiled.
Let me guess.
Claire's in the name. Of course. It's always been about her. He nodded, then looked down at the countertop. You're doing a good job, you know. With all of it. Emma hesitated.
Some days I believe that.
Other days. I feel like I'm walking a tightrope. Well, you haven't fallen yet. She smiled at that, held his gaze a second longer than usual, then looked away. But court didn't wait for dreams or small moments of warmth. Jessica prepared Emma thoroughly: mock interviews, guided responses, coaching on posture, tone, and emotional control. Emma rehearsed every answer. She studied family law in her spare time. She even began journaling, not just for the court but for herself, to reclaim the narrative of her life. Claire had been enrolled in therapy by then, with a quiet, kind therapist named Ellen. After 2 sessions, Ellen provided a letter for the court, noting signs of confusion and anxiety in Claire related to the transition between households. It's not uncommon, Ellen had said during a brief parent consultation. But in Claire's case, there's a noticeable sense of emotional dissonance. She behaves like she needs to adapt to 2 entirely different worlds. That line stuck with Emma for days: 2 entirely different worlds. The courtroom was colder than Emma expected. Ryan arrived in a tailored navy suit, flanked by a lawyer in a charcoal blazer who exuded calculated calm. Margaret didn't attend, but her absence somehow felt like a looming presence anyway. Jessica stood beside Emma, documents neatly arranged, tone professional but piercing. The judge, a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and a reputation for fairness, listened intently as both sides presented their arguments. Ryan's attorney emphasized financial stability, Claire's school performance, and the existing temporary custody arrangement. Emma's side focused on Claire's emotional health, the depth of her bond with her mother, and Emma's consistent role in her day-to-day life. Emma testified calmly, recounting her routine: early mornings baking, walking Claire to school, homework hours, therapy sessions, bedtime rituals. She shared receipts, sales ledgers, photos from the park, messages from customers praising her pastries and kindness. Jessica handed over a binder filled with Claire's drawings, every one showing Emma beside her, smiling, baking, holding hands. In most of them, Ryan was absent. Or drawn in grey. When asked why she had originally agreed to temporary custody, Emma didn't flinch. I was afraid, she said.
Yad no job, no home.
I walked away to protect my daughter from witnessing a toxic environment. But I never gave up on being her mother. I never stopped showing up. Ryan, for his part, looked composed during his testimony. He admitted he had focused on work, hadn't known how to manage family matters after the separation, and hadn't anticipated Emma's resilience. When cross-examined by Jessica, he fumbled slightly. You've never attended a parent-teacher conference since the divorce, correct? No, but You didn't know Claire was in therapy until last week, correct? No, I didn't think. Do you know the name of Claire's current teacher? A pause. Ryan looked at the judge, then back at Jessica. I'm not sure. I think it's Ms. Barker. It's Ms. Delaney, Jessica said. She's had that teacher for 2 months. The judge made notes silently. After the hearing ended, the judge took time to review. No decision would be made until the following week.
Emma stepped out of the courthouse into the pale winter light, her en trembling.
Jessica placed a reassuring hand on her arm.
You did everything right.
No matter what happens, you showed them who you are. Emma nodded, her voice thick. Thank you.
For fighting with me.
Jessica smiled. You're not done fighting yet. But you're not alone anymore.
That evening, Emma walked home with Claire through the light snow.
The flakes caught in her daughter's hair like tiny stars. Did you win today, Mommy? Claire asked. Emma looked down. I think we're closer. And that's enough for today. At home, she found a package waiting at her door. Inside, a small wooden rolling pin engraved with the words, "For all the dough you're gonna roll through life." No note. But Emma knew it was from Sophia. She placed it gently on her kitchen shelf and exhaled. Whatever happened next, she would face it. Because in the oven of hardship, Emma had learned one truth: the best things rise slowly, but they always rise. It was a quiet Friday morning when Emma received the call. She had just finished shaping the last batch of morning rolls, her hands dusted with flour, the scent of rising dough filling the air. Claire was in the other room, humming as she colored with her markers.
The winter sunlight streamed in through the small kitchen window, casting a warm, golden glow over the counter.
The phone buzzed on the table.
Unknown number.
Emma wiped her hands on a towel and answered, cautious. Hello. There was a pause. Then a voice she hadn't heard in weeks. Emma. It's Ryan. She froze, the breath catching in her chest. Ryan?
Why are you?
I'm at Oregon Health and Science, he interrupted. His voice was low, almost hoarse. I've been diagnosed. Emma's heart dropped. Diagnosed with what? Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, he said. It's aggressive. They're saying months. Maybe less. Silence stretched between them. The last word hung in the air like smoke, thick and suffocating. Emma sat down, the towel clenched in her lap. I don't know what to say. I didn't know who else to call, he said. Margaret's not taking it well. Claire. I want to see her. I need to. She closed her eyes. You can't just call after everything and expect me to. I know, he said quickly. I know I don't deserve it. But she's my daughter. And I don't want to leave without saying goodbye. Emma opened her eyes slowly. The countertop in front of her blurred.
How long have you known?
A month. I started treatment. It's not working. Emma didn't speak. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Ryan said.
I just want one weekend.
One weekend with Claire before things get worse. Emma took a long breath. I'll think about it. Thank you, he whispered. That's more than I expected. She hung up without saying goodbye. That evening, after dinner, she sat Claire down on the futon. The TV was off. The air felt thick with things unsaid. Sweetheart, she said gently, Daddy's sick. Claire looked up.
Like a cold. No, Emma said softly.
Something more serious. He's in the hospital, and he wants to see you.
Claire's face fell.
Is he going to be okay? Emma hesitated. Then she shook her head. Probably not. Claire didn't cry. She just nodded slowly, her fingers wrapping around the edge of the cushion. Can we go? Emma touched her daughter's hair. We can. The next morning, they arrived at the hospital. Ryan's room was on the 6th floor, near a window that overlooked the Willamette River. He looked thinner, paler than Emma remembered. The man who once filled a room with his presence now barely filled his hospital bed. Claire ran to him without hesitation. Daddy. Ryan smiled weakly and opened his arms.
There's my girl.
Emma stood at the doorway, watching them. She hadn't told Claire everything. Not yet. Just that her father needed her, and that they had to be kind and brave. Ryan held Claire for a long time, his hand trembling as he stroked her hair. Emma looked away, the moment too private, too painful. After a while, Claire began to chatter, telling him about school, about the rolls they baked, about the new girl in her class who didn't like raisins.
Ryan listened, smiling, nodding.
Later, when Claire stepped out with a nurse to get a juice box, Ryan looked at Emma. Thank you, he said. You didn't have to bring her. Emma sat in the chair beside his bed, careful to keep her distance. I didn't do it for you. I know. They sat in silence for a long moment. I've made a lot of mistakes, Ryan said finally. Most of them involved you.
Emma said nothing.
I didn't see you, he continued. Not really.
I saw what you wanted. Sommeonquier. Prédictable.
Someone who fit the version of my life I thought I needed. She turned to him, her voice steady. And when I stopped fitting that version, you threw me away. He nodded. Yes. And I was wrong. His breathing grew labored. Emma poured him a cup of water and handed it to him. He sipped carefully, then reached for a folder on the side table.
I veux changer the will. Claire j'ai à trust.
College fund, full ownership of my shares in the firm when she turns 21. I added something for you too. Not because I expect you to forgive me, but because I owe you. Emma opened the folder. Inside was a notarized letter and a copy of a new will. I don't need your money, she said quietly. I know. But she does. And I want her to remember that I gave her something. They were quiet again. You should also know, Ryan added, his voice growing thin, my mother, she won't like this. She doesn't know yet. Emma nodded. She never liked me. But Claire loves you. And you've given her more than I ever could. Emma stood to leave. You have time left.
Don't waste it.
The next 2 weekends, Emma brought Claire again. They colored, watched cartoons on the hospital television, even brought cinnamon rolls, Claire insisted. Ryan smiled when he tasted them. You kept the recipe. Emma only nodded. By the 3rd weekend, Ryan couldn't sit up anymore. Claire lay beside him on the bed, her head on his chest, listening to his shallow breaths. He whispered something into her ear. She nodded and kissed his cheek. Emma stood in the hallway, tears falling silently. 2 days later, Ryan died in his sleep.
The hospital called that down.
Emma didn't wake Claire right away. She sat on the edge of the futon and stared out the window, the sky a flat sheet of gray. When she finally did wake her daughter, Claire just nodded, as if some part of her already knew. They attended the funeral quietly. Margaret barely looked at Emma. Claire wore a navy dress and held her mother's hand the entire time. After the service, Margaret approached. Her face was hard, her eyes red. You'll hear from my lawyer, she said. Emma met her gaze.
I'm not afraid of you anymore.
Margaret didn't respond. She turned and walked away. Back at home, Emma tucked Claire into bed. The little girl stared at the ceiling. Mommy, she said, Daddy told me something. What did he say? He said I got his smart brain. But I got your heart. Emma kissed her forehead. That sounds about right. Claire was asleep within minutes. Emma sat by the window and watched the night stretch over the city. There was no celebration, no triumph. Just the quiet hum of grief and the knowledge that something final had ended. But there was also space now.
Space for something new to begin.
The envelope arrived a week after the funeral. Thick, ivory-colored, stamped with the seal of Ryan's attorney. Emma stood in the apartment doorway, fingers hesitating over the flap. Claire was at school, and the kitchen smelled faintly of baked apples from a failed attempt at a new recipe. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. She set the envelope on the table, poured herself a cup of coffee, and stared at it for nearly an hour before finally opening it. Inside were 2 documents, a certified copy of Ryan's final will, and a personal letter, handwritten on firm stationery.
Emma read the letter first.
Emma, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I don't deserve your forgiveness, and I'm not asking for it. But I need you to know that I saw you in the end, not just as Claire's mother, but as the woman I failed to understand. You gave our daughter strength. You gave her warmth. I gave her walls. The trust is for her. It's not much compared to what she deserves, but it's clean.
No string.
No interference from my mother. I've also allocated 20% of my shares in the firm to you. You're under no obligation to keep them, but I want you to have them. As a gesture. As a door. Claire will ask questions, eventually. Please be honest with her, but also kind. Don't let her remember me as a monster. I don't want her to carry hate.
Only clarity.
I know I'm late. But I saw you, Emma. I did. Ryan. Emma folded the letter carefully, her hands trembling.
Her brise cooked somewhere between sorrow and relief.
The legal summary confirmed it all. Claire would receive a trust, accessible only for education and living expenses until she turned 21. Emma had been named trustee. She had full authority. Additionally, the firm's legal counsel would contact her to begin the process of transferring Ryan's shares. 20%. Enough to make her a minor stakeholder. Enough to put her in the room, if she chose to enter. The phone rang later that afternoon.
Jessica.
I received a copy too, Jessica said. It's real. And enforceable. His mother will contest it, Emma murmured. She can try. But unless there's evidence of duress or mental incompetence, she won't get far.
I don't want a fight.
Jessica paused. Sometimes, standing your ground isn't fighting. It's protecting what's already yours. That evening, Emma sat with Claire at the kitchen table. The girl was coloring a treehouse, each branch labeled with imaginary rooms: library, pancake lab, cloud room. Emma handed her a cup of cocoa and sat beside her. Claire, she said gently, do you remember what Daddy said about the future? Claire looked up. He said I was going to be strong. Like you. Emma smiled. That's true. He also left something for you. Something that will help when you're older.
Claire's eyes widened. Like treasure. Emma chuckled softly. Something like that.
But it's not about money. It's about choices.
Daddy made one final choice.
To take care of you, even when he couldn't be here. Claire nodded solemnly and went back to coloring. 2 days later, a formal letter arrived from Margaret's attorney, threatening legal action over the estate. Emma took it straight to Jessica. She'll do everything she can to push you out, Jessica warned. She won't just want the money.
She'll want Claire.
She's not getting her, Emma said quietly. Not this time. Meanwhile, the bakery side of Emma's life began to shift. Daniel offered her a larger contract, daily delivery, custom orders, even a small display case with her name on it. I'll build you a logo, he said. People ask about the woman behind the roles. Emma hesitated. I don't know if I'm ready. Daniel leaned on the counter.
You've been ready.
You just didn't know it. She launched a small Instagram account, at Baked by Emma and Claire, and within weeks, the photos of her golden rolls and handwritten labels began to spread. Local bloggers picked it up. Sophia joked that she was famous now, and Emma laughed for the first time in what felt like forever. But with the growth came new decisions. One morning, while kneading dough, she received a call from the firm's managing partner. We'd like to meet, the voice said. Your stake gives you voting rights. We're offering a buyout. Substantial. Emma didn't answer right away. That evening, she stood on the porch of her apartment, staring at the city skyline. Claire was asleep inside, hugging the pink cloud pillow that had once hidden Ryan's anonymous card. Emma held the letter from the firm in one hand and the offer from Daniel in the other. 2 paths. One led back into the world she had left behind, a world of meetings, negotiations, silent wars fought with polite smiles.
The odor led forward.
Toward flour-covered aprons, late nights baking, and a business built with her daughter's name etched into every recipe. She closed her eyes and chose. The next morning, she met with the firm. "I'm not selling," she said. "Not yet. I want a seat at the table. I want to vote."
You want transparency about what Claire inherit.
They looked at her, surprised. She didn't flinch. Later, she called Daniel. "Let's talk about expansion," she said. That weekend, she brought Claire to the park. They sat on a bench, sharing a warm cinnamon roll.
Birds fluttered through the branch above them.
Children laughed nearby. Claire looked up. "Mommy." "Yes, love. Are we okay now?" Emma looked at her daughter, this small, brilliant, resilient being, and smiled. "We're better than okay." Because they weren't surviving anymore. They were living. The morning they hung the sign, Emma stood in the doorway with her arms crossed and her heart thudding beneath her sweater.
The letters gleamed under the soft Portland sun, unpainted in pale yellow and teal. Claire et Mom, backed with that.
It had taken 4 months of quiet hustle to reach this moment. Late-night baking. Licenses. Permits. Negotiating with suppliers. Renovating the little corner shop space that used to be a dry cleaner, scrubbing every surface until it shone. Daniel had helped design the layout, Sophia had helped negotiate the lease. Jessica had drawn up the paperwork to make the business official, and Claire had helped choose the logo, a simple outline of a rolling pin with a heart in the center. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't flashy. But it was theirs. Inside, the space smelled of fresh paint and cinnamon. The glass display case, second-hand but polished to a shine, sat in the front corner, already stocked with test batches of brown sugar muffins, chocolate swirl bread, and of course, the signature cinnamon rolls. Claire twirled in a circle on the wooden floor, her dress spinning. "Can I take the first picture for Instagram?"
Emma looked.
"Only if you get the logo in it." Claire posed beside the counter, holding a warm bun with both hands, eyes wide and proud. Emma snapped the photo and uploaded it to their growing account with a simple caption. "We're open. We're ready."
Comme taste the story. #Claire and Mom.
Customers began trickling in before noon. Some were neighbors who had passed by the storefront for weeks and wondered what was coming. Others were loyal followers from the online community Emma had quietly built, strangers who had cheered her on without ever tasting a single bite. A few were old friends from her former life, curious or perhaps remorseful. By the end of the day, they had sold out. Sophia arrived just after closing with 2 bottles of sparkling cider and a bouquet of sunflowers. "You did it," she said, arms open.
You crazy, brilliant, stubborn woman.
Emma hugged her, the tension finally starting to melt from her shoulders. "I couldn't have done it without you. You didn't do it without me. But you did do it." Daniel stopped by that evening with his daughter, a shy 6-year-old who clung to his leg until Claire offered her a cookie and pulled her toward the tiny chalkboard table in the corner. "She's been asking to meet the girl behind the name," Daniel said, watching the 2 girls giggle.
You've built something beautiful, Emma.
Emma glanced around the shop, the warm lights, the hum of life in the walls, the small stack of to-go boxes waiting by the register. "I just wanted a space where people felt safe. Federal. Seen." Daniel nodded.
And now you've got one.
By the end of the week, they were operating at full rhythm. Claire and Mom was more than a bakery. It was becoming a meeting place.
A safe space.
A corner of the world carved out for comfort and recovery. Emma noticed it in the regulars who returned not just for the sweets, but for the warmth. There was the retired teacher who came every Tuesday for banana bread and stayed to talk about her garden. The young woman in a hoodie who bought the same muffin every morning but slowly began leaving behind notes, quotes, affirmations, questions, on napkins at the bar. The construction worker who brought his twin daughters every Friday after school and let them pick 2 treats each, always different, always an adventure. And there was Tosha. Emma first saw her one rainy afternoon, standing outside the shop window, soaked to the bone, clutching a backpack with torn straps. Her hair was matted, and her eyes were distant, but she stared at the cinnamon rolls like they were something sacred. Emma stepped outside with a bag and handed it to her without a word. Tosha looked at it, confused. "How much?" "It's yours," Emma said. The next day, she returned.
And the day after that.
Eventually, she began wiping tables in exchange for roles. Emma hired her 2 weeks later. Part-time. No questions asked. "You're building a halfway house with butter and flour," Sophia said one night, watching Tosha mop the floors with quiet care.
Emma shrugged.
"I'm building what I needed. Back then." The bakery gained attention slowly, first a local blog, then a write-up in a community magazine titled, "From Ashes to Aprons, How One Mother Started Again." Orders picked up. Emma brought in a second oven, another staff member. Claire started calling herself co-founder, and drew imaginary expansion plans with a second floor that had a sleepover room for customers. Still, Emma refused to forget the why. Every box went out with a handwritten note, made with heart. "Thank you for being part of our story." She kept Ryan's letter in a drawer at the counter. She didn't read it often, but it grounded her. Not as a reminder of pain, but as proof of growth. That something broken could still leave behind something useful. Margaret had, as expected, contested the will. But after months of silence, her attorney had finally reached out with a proposed settlement. Claire's trust would remain untouched. Emma would retain her shares, conditional only on periodic financial reports to the firm. Jessica smiled when she read the terms. "That's as close to an apology as she'll ever offer." Emma didn't smile back. "It's not for me. It's for Claire." The day they signed the final agreement, Emma didn't celebrate. She went home, sat on the futon that had once been her only piece of furniture, and cried. Then she baked. Not rolls. Not muffins. A cake. The first she'd made in over 2 years. A lemon sponge with honey glaze. She brought it to the bakery the next morning and set it out for free.
No price tag.
Daniel asked.
Emma shook her head.
Some things are just for joy. That afternoon, as the bakery buzzed with laughter and the smell of sugar, Claire leaned across the counter and whispered, "I think this is the best place in the world." Emma smiled. Me too. They weren't just rebuilding. They were building better. The offer came in an email. Subject line, exciting opportunity for Claire and Mom Bakery. Emma had almost deleted it, assuming it was another spam pitch for promotional packaging or wholesale flour. But the sender's domain, potisregroup.com, caught her eye. When she clicked it open, her stomach tightened. The message was short, polished, and direct. We've been following the story of Claire and Mom with admiration. Your narrative has captured hearts, and your brand speaks to authenticity in a market hungry for meaning. We would love to explore a partnership, investment, licensing, possible expansion, under our nationwide boutique bakery division. If interested, we can send our full proposal. Emma stared at the screen for a long time. Then she closed her laptop. That night, she didn't mention the email to anyone. Not to Daniel, not to Sophia, not even to Claire. Instead, she lay awake in bed, listening to the city hum outside the window. For months now, everything had been growing. The bakery's shelves emptied by noon on most days. Their Instagram had crossed 10,000 followers. The website, built by a volunteer customer who worked in tech, received requests from out of state. People were asking when they'd open in Seattle, in San Francisco, in New York. Emma had smiled politely, always deflecting. We're just a neighborhood place, she would say. That's all we ever wanted to be. But that was before the offer. Before the possibility of becoming more. The proposal arrived the next morning. Potisserie Group was offering a full rebrand. They would keep the Claire and Mom story, but fold it into a larger umbrella, polished packaging, mass distribution, merchandising, training kitchens. Emma would serve as a creative consultant. Claire's name would remain on the logo. In return, Emma would receive a significant sum, enough to pay off the lease, expand, and guarantee Claire's college education. More than that, she'd have access to capital, national exposure, and professional backing. All it would cost was everything. The bakery would no longer be hers, not truly. It would become a brand. A product. That afternoon, she brought the proposal to Sophia. The older woman read it silently, her expression unreadable. They're offering you freedom, Sophia said finally. But only if you trade the kind you already have. Emma nodded.
That is what it feel like. What do you want?
Emma hesitated. I want stability. I want to stop worrying every time the oven flickers or a supplier delays a shipment. I want to make enough so Claire doesn't feel the edges of my fear.
Sophia leaned forward.
That's fair. But let me ask you this, when you wake up and unlock that front door, when you smell the first tray baking, do you feel joy? Emma looked down at her hands. Yes. Then that matters. Later, she walked to the park with Claire, hoping the air would clear her head. They sat on the same bench as the day they sold their first tray. Claire was coloring again, using a napkin as a canvas. Mommy, she said suddenly, what does franchise mean?
Emma blinked.
Where did you hear that? A man came in today while you were in the back. He asked if you were going to turn the bakery into a franchise.
Emma sighed.
It means someone wants to make more versions of our bakery. In other cities. With different people running them. Claire frowned. But it wouldn't be ours? Not exactly. Claire was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, can people still come in and tell you about their day? Emma smiled. Maybe not. It might be too big for that.
Claire shrugged.
Then I don't think I like it. Emma watched her daughter go back to drawing, focused and unbothered. A 7-year-old didn't care about financial security or market strategy. She cared about muffins warm from the oven, handwritten notes on boxes, the way her mom's eyes lit up when someone praised her baking. That night, Emma sat down at her kitchen table and opened her notebook, the one she'd started the day she left Ryan's house. The page was filled with old goals. Bake 3 days a week. Save money from sales.
Start a small online store. Keep Claire close.
Use Ryan's money only if absolutely necessary. She turned to the last page. Then slowly she wrote. New decision.
Keep the name. Keep the mission.
Say no to the offer. Say yes to more time.
Gros small, gros slow, gros strong.
The next morning, she drafted a response.
Dear Pâtisserie Group.
Thank you for your generous offer and kind words. I'm honored that our story resonated with you. However, Claire and Mom was never built to scale. It was built to heal, to connect, and to serve our community. At this time, we're choosing to remain independent.
Wishing you all the best. Emma Carson.
She sent it before she could second guess. The bakery opened at 7 a.m., as usual. The regulars returned, as usual. Claire placed the morning tray in the case and scribbled, Happy Cinnamon Day on the chalkboard. As Emma served a customer, Daniel leaned over the counter. Big decisions? Emma smiled. The biggest. But I think I got it right. He nodded. You usually do. At noon, a woman came in with 2 children and quietly ordered 3 rolls. She hesitated, then added, I saw your story in the paper. I just got out of a shelter. I've been thinking about starting over. Emma handed her the bag with an extra bun inside. Starting over is what we do best here. The woman's eyes filled, but she said nothing, just nodded and left. Emma turned back to the kitchen, the sound of the bell above the door still echoing behind her. She didn't need a nationwide brand. She had enough. And what she had built herself. With flour, with heart, and with the hands of a mother who had chosen love over fear. Sunday mornings at Claire and Mom were different. They weren't busy in the frantic, weekday kind of way. They were gentle, unhurried, as if even the walls of the bakery understood that Sunday was meant for breathing deeply and holding space, for joy, for stillness, for small sacred things. Emma unlocked the door at 7 a.m. sharp. Outside, the rain had settled into a quiet drizzle, leaving a sheen on the sidewalk that reflected the soft golden light from inside. She flipped the sign to open and inhaled the first scent of rising cinnamon rolls, now so familiar it felt like home. Claire was already awake, perched on the little stool behind the counter, sketching a new idea for a honey sweet potato loaf she insisted they try next week. On the chalkboard sign near the entrance, she had written, in bright pink chalk, Sunday is for smiles, add extra butter and joy to your morning.
Emma looked softly when she saw it.
The first customer of the day was Mrs. Johnson, their regular Sunday visitor, a retired teacher with a habit of ordering the same lemon muffin and chamomile tea while reading her historical fiction novels in the corner window seat. Today, she brought a small paper bag of lavender seeds. For your garden, dear, she said as she handed it over. I don't have the space anymore, but I thought you two might know what to do with them. Emma took the bag carefully. We'll plant them this week. Thank you. When the small rush passed, Emma walked to the back, where Claire was now drawing floor plans for a second bakery upstairs, with a rooftop tea garden. Do you think we could really grow lavender out back? Claire asked, tilting her head. I think we can grow anything if we love it enough, Emma replied. By mid-morning, the shop had filled. The chatter was soft, the kind that came from people who felt safe. Tasha, now one of their most dependable staff, moved behind the counter with a quiet confidence that had once seemed impossible. Her apron had her name stitched into it, a gift from Claire. Sophia was in the back, checking inventory, occasionally shouting through the kitchen door when the milk order was late or the sugar was running low. Daniel dropped by at 10 o'clock, just like every Sunday for the past 3 months, with a fresh cup of coffee from his cafe and his usual gentle smile. You've got a line outside, he said, placing the cup in front of Emma. She took it gratefully. I know. Every week I keep thinking it'll slow down, and it never does. He leaned on the counter. That's because people don't come here for just baked goods. They come here to feel something. Emma raised an eyebrow. And what is that? Hope. She didn't reply. She didn't have to. At noon, a little girl came in holding her father's hand. Emma recognized them. They'd been by a few times in the past month.
The girl walked up to the counter slowly, her voice barely above a whisper.
Miss Emma, she said, I'm sad today.
Emma leaned down. Can you tell me why?
My mom moved away. Far. Emma nodded, her chest tightening. That's really hard. Would you like to help me bake something today? The girl hesitated, then nodded. Within minutes, she was in the back with Claire, wearing an oversized apron and stirring batter like it was a mission of great importance. Her father watched from the seating area, eyes full of quiet gratitude. Emma didn't say anything. She just passed him a cinnamon roll and smiled. By the end of the day, the shelves were almost empty. The last muffins were boxed up to be delivered to the local women's shelter, a weekly ritual Emma had started in honor of where she'd once been herself. Claire swept the floor while humming a tune, and Tasha wiped down the counters with practiced ease. Emma stood near the window, sipping the last of her coffee as the rain outside faded into mist. She looked around the shop, not at the furniture or the cash register or the gleaming trays of baked goods, but at the people. This was what she had built. This was the life she had chosen. Once, she had walked away from everything she thought she was supposed to be: wife, homemaker, quiet perfection. She'd left with nothing but her daughter and a recipe book, and she had started over. Not with grand ambition. Not with certainty. But with heart. Claire came over and wrapped her arms around her mother's waist. Mommy, she said, looking up, do you think we'll always have this bakery? Emma smiled and kissed the top of her head. As long as we keep putting love into it, she whispered, it'll always be here. That night, as they closed up shop, Emma left a new note taped to the door for tomorrow's customers. Thank you for helping us build a place full of warmth. You've given our story a home. She turned off the lights, locked the door, and took Claire's hand. They stepped out into the quiet street, under a sky that had just begun to clear. The clouds were parting, one by one, and beyond them, the stars waited. Together, they walked home.